Yep, go ahead.
Okay. Hello, St. Anne Parish, and welcome to this late Advent quick things as we anticipate our celebration of Christmas. We have a special guest with us today, but very brief announcements. There aren't a lot of things to announce. Registration for our Christmas masses is pretty well complete. Several masses are already full, but there are a few masses for which there is room, and that registration has been resumed online. So if you go to the website, you'll see which masses are open. And we hope that you, and certainly continue to extend the invitation to join us to celebrate at one of those remaining masses for Christmas. The other masses are full, so please don't come thinking we will let you in. That just puts us in a very difficult place because space is limited. And if mass is full, it's full. And we don't want to have to send anybody away. We don't want to be like the innkeepers in Bethlehem. So register for the masses that are available. If you're not registered for one of the other masses and you think, well, they'll let me in, please don't put us in that position because we probably won't. Beyond Christmas, we'll celebrate the Feast of the Holy Family this weekend. There'll be masses as usual for a Sunday at 4 p.m. Saturday and 9:30 a.m. Sunday, just to give our staff a little break. The 9:30 Sunday morning mass will be live streamed this week. So join us. Give yourselves a little break as well after celebrating Christmas. We'll celebrate the Feast of the Holy Family. We will have mass in church at 4, but the live stream will be the 9:30 mass on Sunday. And also just call your attention to a nice selection of Christmas related and some Advent related books, DVDs and things in the library, which is open. You can come in anytime and just check those things out. Literally check them out and take them home and find. I hope maybe have some time during these next the weeks of the week of the holiday to spend some time reflecting on some of what you find there. So Christmas Mass registration continues for some masses, and then the Feast of the Holy Family the next weekend. With us, as you see on the screen, is Father Tom Krieg. Some of you probably have known Father Tom for a long time, and he and I know each other, so we're going to call each other Tom and Tom. Is that okay with you, Tom, if we do that?
Okay with me, yeah.
Okay. Tom grew up here at St. Anne's, just up the street on Cedar Avenue or Street? Cedar Avenue, right?
Cedar Street.
Cedar Street.
Avenue.
Okay.
Avenues go, north-south.
Oh, I don't know that.
Yeah.
So grew up just up the road on Cedar Street. Went to school here at St. Anne's. Graduated from Newman High School in 1982, and then was ordained a priest for our diocese in 1992. And probably the first time I ever came to St. Anne's was for Tom's Mass of Thanksgiving, the day after his ordination. We're going to talk about Bethlehem, but first, Tom, do you have any childhood memories or anything about Christmas at St. Anne's that come to mind?
You gave me the heads up, so I was like really trying to remember. It was like, and it was the old church. I think I forget the new church went up like mid 80s or early 80s.
Well, not so much a new church; it was just renovated.
Yeah, right. The whole different look though. If you're inside,
right.
I could not remember any Christmas as a child in the church. Where I went to church every week and everything. I remember a couple. I think mainly I remember like when I was in college and I'd come home and we'd usually do the 10 p.m. mass on Christmas Eve, and it was always just very beautiful, and seeing the friends from high school that would be there too.
Sure, right.
And then when I was ordained a deacon before a priest, Father McKillop invited me to preach that mass.
Okay, at Christmas.
Yeah, it's a pretty big deal. Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Happy memory there, yeah.
Okay, that meant he trusted you, Tom. He trust you with the Christmas homily.
Right.
So, but of course he knew you well as well. So. A year ago, Tom was on sabbatical in the Holy Land, but much of that time was spent in Bethlehem, right, Tom?
Yeah, I mean, I stayed, as I'll talk about in a minute, Bethlehem has a wall around it, and I stayed 5-minute walk or less from that wall, outside on the Jerusalem side, outside of Bethlehem. But so whenever I had a free day, I'd always walk into Bethlehem.
Sure. And I just thought as we're anticipating the celebration of Christmas, and obviously Bethlehem has a significant geographical dimension to that. And it would just be good to get a handle on Bethlehem of the 21st century, because it's a complicated a complicated place. And I just think it's important for us to have an awareness of that. So I asked Tom to join us to talk a little bit about that. First of all, Tom, can you talk about the Lars community? So we sold items that you coordinated the sale of these nativity scene figures and things made from wool of sheep from Bethlehem,
Right.
descendants of the sheep that breathed upon Jesus in the manger. Tell us about the Lars community there.
So Lars, it's part of an international movement. It means the ark in French, and they try to create community. In most places, they actually live together. So they meaning people with intellectual disabilities and people without those disabilities, and really just form community and live together. It's really pretty beautiful. So we have large communities in the United States. In Bethlehem, they tried that, and it was difficult because a lot of the volunteers or the non-disabled people in those communities would have immigration issues and their visas would run out, and it was hard to maintain a stable presence. And so what they have in Bethlehem is a part of L'Arche International, but it's a workshop. So 5 days a week, the people all show up at 8 in the morning and they leave at like 4. And it's just beautiful. I went, if I could just say it, and I was told by a Christian brother at the University of Bethlehem. He said, go check out the L'Arche. They have a really cool gift shop. You can get some nice things there. It's for a good cause. And I was familiar with L'Arche and I worked with people with those disabilities. So I went and I walked in and the person greeted me, kind of the director of the place. And she said, oh yeah, we have a gift shop. You can look at it, but we're having lunch in 5 minutes. You want to join us? And I said, okay, sure. And it was a typical kind of Palestinian meal with chicken and rice. And there's just a lot of joy in the room. You could see, and they prayed and held hands and all this. And there's a group, it's Muslim and Christian both. And then we were done with lunch and they said, hey, if you're free, you want to come up and help us make our crafts? We make these crafts that we sell. And I'm like, and I had the day free. So I'm like, sure. I did that. And I don't think I got to the gift shop till like a couple months later. But I started going pretty much every week, and I'd volunteer for either a morning or an afternoon. And it really was, that's the great thing about being in a place for 3 months. It's not just for a week, you just go to the holy places and leave. I could actually be there. Just really a very important part of my months away.
Well, that's kind of why I wanted to talk to you about this, Thomas, because you were there for a longer time. I mean, lots of people can say we've been to Bethlehem. I was there with you and Father Sloviak from St. Mark's in 2001, just
right
before September 11th, I think it was. And so I can say I've been to Bethlehem, but unless you're in a place for an extended time, you don't really get an appreciation of what the people there, of the joys and sorrows of the folks who live in a place. And I think there's a lot of struggle in Bethlehem that we're clueless to, most of us in the United States. What would you say is the biggest misunderstanding that we might have about Bethlehem?
Well, maybe we think of it as a quaint little place, little town of Bethlehem. I forget what the population is, but it's now it's really how could I say it? To say war zone is exaggerating, but it has been a place of a lot of uprising. There's a wall around the city that started being under construction. I think probably did you see that wall when you were there?
Some of that was there.
I think maybe in the mid 90s they started putting up some of the wall, and it depends on the who's telling the history, or who's telling the story, right? There's always the narratives, and so there's there's some truth in both of them. So from the factions are Israelis and Palestinians. I think we know a lot of that is in the news a lot, right? And so there was a lot of violence coming from just from the beginning. I mean, how deep do you go back, right? So Palestinians were living there after World War II. The Jewish people came and they were granted a homeland by the UN, but there were Palestinians there, so there was this war to get them out, and Israel won that war. And so Palestinians were displaced. And so there's just been a lot of like, we want our land back ever since then. And so, but you have Israel with this incredibly powerful military presence, and Palestinians with not, you know. And so they would Palestinians who were trying to do violent resistance, they would go and they would, you know, strap the suicide bombers, and they would come into Bethlehem or into Jerusalem, and maybe, you know, those are real famous, very tragic events. And so from the Israeli point of view, to stop that, they built this wall, so you can't come out unless you have a permit and an ID. And so, and then from the Palestinian point of view, it's like they really don't want us here. They're trying to choke us economically. They want more land than the international community would recognize. So where they built that wall, you know, is expanded the territory of Israel and diminished the territory of what we call the West Bank, or, you know, where Palestinians were living. So that's you know, they have the different narratives there. And
Sure.
So today, you know, a lot of them, the ones who have the best jobs, they work in Israel, and they got to line up to get out of these checkpoints to get through the wall in the morning. And it can be a real long wait, and people have had, you know, heart attacks while they're kind of waiting in those lines, and they're kind of pushed through like cattle. And it very much at the sort of depends on the mood of the people at the checkpoint, how quickly.
Kind of the whim, right? The whim of the officer or whatever.
Yeah. So there's a lot of, you know, in terms of, like, you know, we talk in our Catholic tradition about human dignity. It really feels like human dignity is compromised in Bethlehem. If you're a resident there, you know, you're clearly treated as second class, and you're under the power of someone else. And it's not that, you know, different maybe from Jesus' time and the Romans, you know. So it's like we have this enormous military power that is keeping you from, you know, being who you want to be. You know, and yet from the Israeli point of view, well, there's a reason for that, because we have to try to not be attacked. And so it goes back and forth. But so the biggest misconception, I don't know, I just don't know if people realize that it's a lot, and used to be a lot of, that it's such a, that people are really penned in. It's almost like a human cage. It's a big age, but they don't have, for example, things we would take for granted, like a soccer field for kids to play in. There aren't any. In all of Bethlehem, there's no soccer field. It's incredible. You know, and when that wall went up, you know, some people had land outside the wall, or they had a garden or olive trees, and they just can't, or they had relatives, they had friends. And if they're on the other side of the wall, they never see each other. They don't have that land. There's a lot of frustration.
Well, what does that do to the people? So how does that affect who they are and how they interact with one another, how they interact with you? I mean, talk about the first part first, and then I'd be curious about how they react to Americans.
Well, maybe a narrative. So when you walk into Bethlehem from the checkpoint, and I always went, sometimes I'd go at after work hours, and all of the Palestinian people were coming home, the buses would just be jammed. And usually I go a less busy time, so I could kind of walk through. And with my American passport, it was just, you know, it's like gold as far as, you know, Israeli security. So I never had any issues. So about the people and how so when you walk through as an American, or really a tourist, I guess, when you get through the checkpoint, you enter Bethlehem proper, there's this huge line of taxis. And they all want your business. Well, I like to walk. You like to walk, Tom. You might not want a taxi everywhere. And yet, you know, it's kind of like their income, and they're pretty aggressive, you know. And where are you going? And I was told you should only pay 20 shekels for a ride up to Manger Square, or the Church Nativity, by my people that I was living with. But they always want, you know, 50 shekels, 100 shekels. And then you have to kind of negotiate that before you get in, or they have sit down. We talk later about the price. You know, no, I want, you know, you don't want to be a jerk, you know. And heck, I have more than 20 shekels in my pocket, but you know, I don't want to be taken either. And so that's, but mainly I wanted to walk, you know. And I remember one day I was walking past, and I just at some, you know, how do you? Usually I'd say like, not today, and then they'd recognize me the next day and say, not today, whenever are you going to take a ride? And you know, once I was walking another part of Bethlehem, and the guy was just kind of following me, and he kept, and I didn't know what to say, so I just kind of ignored him. I kept walking, thought he'd get and he kind of got out, and he walked in front of me, and he said, "Hey, why don't you talk to me?" and I said, well, I really just, I feel if I talk to you, you're going to try to get me to go in your taxi, and I really don't want a taxi ride today. I want to walk, and I'm sorry, I don't mean to insult you. And then we talked for a little bit more, and he said, well, basically, he goes, fine, thank you for talking to me at least. I'm a person. He said, you Americans, you come from across the street, you have all this money in your pocket, and you just ignore us.
Oh.
And I said, I'm sorry. And he said, okay. And then he shook my hand.
Wow, that was a prophet, Tom.
Yeah,
What a prophet there.
Yeah. So getting past the taxi cabs is always a challenge. Oh, and then once this guy took me to Major Square, I thought, well, I'll take a ride today. So I Major Square, and we had agreed like 30 shekels or something. So then I got up there, and then he said, 50 shekels. I said, we said 30, And he said, well, I got a family, and I'm like, well, I know, but we said 30. And so I don't know, I think I gave him 4, but it was got to be this, you never really want to fight with people, but it's like cheapers. So, and it got kind of a little bit nasty. And I think they would sort of put on a show like they're really deeply offended. So you have sympathy, but they're probably, it's just part of their game, So anyway, I give them probably 40 shekels. And then later in the day, after this really unpleasant, I think, dialogue, I'm walking home. The same guy drives by and he beeps and he waves like we're good friends. I'm like, what are you? You were just yelling at me. But anyway, after that one, so in my group that I was with in my sabbatical, I shared that the hostility and the difficulty with the taxi. And the person who lives there all the time, who's the director of our program, said, these people are people in Bethlehem. This gets to your original question 10 minutes later. They are wounded. They live in a situation of oppression. They have their children who see them being mistreated by soldiers. They see and it's so embarrassing for probably anyone, but for an Arab male to be put down publicly by someone, and that happens, and there's all kind of under the heel of the soldiers walking with the guns, the Israeli soldiers. So, and he just said, you just have to realize that when you're interacting with people that they're coming from this place of psychology where there's a lot of oppression. Yeah.
And kind of a hopelessness in terms of it all, or
I don't know if I got that deep with anybody, especially those, the ones that I met and spent a lot of time with were mainly the people at the Lars Community, the people at the University of Bethlehem, the priests there, and the brothers, I guess, who were just awesome. I would celebrate Eucharist with them there about once every couple of weeks. And then a gift shop owner named Majdi, which means glory in Arabic, who he was proud to tell me. And I'd walk by, if I was in a hurry, sometimes I was taking these icon writing classes in Bethlehem too, and I'd be late and have to go, and he'd see me walking by, Tom, come in, coffee, I make you coffee. I mean, Majdi, I gotta go. And sometimes I would have to take a long detour route, so I wouldn't walk by Majdi's shop because I wouldn't, I hate to say no, he wants to make me this coffee. It wasn't just to sell me stuff. I stopped there probably 2-3 times a week just to chat. In fact, I sold some of his stuff too when we were selling our stuff. But anyway, so those were happy days too, to sit in the back of the gift shop talking to Majdi and his son.
Sure. You have some pictures, don't you, to show?
Yeah, you wanted me to show you some pictures? Sure. I can maybe share a little bit of the. So this is. Can you see that?
Yep.
So there's a lot of colorful art. I'm sorry if there's anything profane on this. I tried to not have that, but so that's just part of the wall. You can see it's going to be a hard thing to cross, and that surrounds not always at that height, but for most of the city, that wall surrounds you. So if you're inside that wall and you don't have the right papers, you remain inside that wall. There's a lot of kind of ironic sort of art and things like that. See this guy? Can you see my mouse?
Yeah.
That's Muhammad Ali over there. I was like,
okay, your hero.
Yeah.
Is this on the Israeli side, or this is the Bethlehem? This is the Bethlehem side.
Yeah, the Israeli side is clean of graffiti.
And that, that's the border between Mexico and the United States is the same way. The wall on the Mexican side is decorated and quite beautiful, some beautiful pieces or some beautiful artistic designs. But on the United States side, it's either rusty or gray.
Yeah, they just put up, I think it's about at this area, they just put up a new one. I saw a picture of the wall. There was an autistic man who was shot and killed in the old city of Jerusalem. I forget his name, but the police were there, and he was in kind of a high-stress area in Jerusalem. And he started running the police, and so they thought that was suspicious. So they shot him, and then he cowered in a corner, and then they killed him. It's just horrific. And so he's sort of like a symbol of the oppression, And so they have a huge picture of him that they just put up there last week. Yeah. So this is part of the wall. This is still Bethlehem side inside, but it's not heavily graffitied. It's a little off the beaten track. And every Friday afternoon at 5:30, we would meet at the wall here, and we'd start here, and we would walk down up to the upper left there, and then walk back, and then close. And this was that's Our Lady of Bethlehem, Our Lady of Palestine, I think they called it. So they painted that, and we'd say the Rosary as we walked. And just the simple Rosary, no preaching or anything, and for peace. But it was a beautiful community to get to know. In fact, I didn't deserve this compliment, but at the end they would often say, "Is there a priest here to give us a blessing?" Most people knew some English, Most people there were Arabic, some French. A lot of the Christians there were like sisters. You can see the one with the habit there. The man with the bald head is a Christian brother. The woman on the far left, though, she's a resident of Bethlehem, a Christian woman. Anyway, she said, thank you, Father, for this blessing. And I think someone said it was my last day. And she said, thank you. And I said, Afwan, which is you're welcome in Arabic. And she was so moved that I would use an Arabic term, Afwan. And she just said, you've really been part of us these months. And I just thought, well, if she thought so, I'd be so proud to hold that. And you're just there 3 months, you're kind of in and out. But it was a beautiful thing to hear, because that's what we want to do. We want to be with people, right? So this is just a little history. This is all in Bethlehem. This is actually entering a refugee camp. We think of refugee camps maybe as tents, like people fleeing from Syria and live in this temporary tent encampment. Well, briefly in 1948, with that war between Israel and the Palestinians, a lot of the Palestinians who owned land, say like in Nazareth or up in Galilee or someplace around, or even around this area, they were driven from their homes, but they assumed after the war was over they could go back home. So they didn't take like a lot of stuff. They just took their key. They locked the door and they took their key, thinking they'd come back in a week, and they never returned. And so you see this key. It's a symbol of their desire to return to their home. Even this gate is a keyhole.
Yeah.
And so there's that real sense. Now it was really practical that 70 years later that they could go back to the land. The houses probably aren't even there anymore. But the key remains a real symbol that something was taken from us that was ours, and we want it back. And this is just an example. So this is a refugee camp house. So again, so it's right. We call it a refugee camp, and the United Nations administers it. In fact, they say it's some of the best education in the West Bank because the UN administers it. but the living conditions are tough. So they have nowhere to go. There's nowhere to expand. And so as families grow and they have children, they just build up. And at this place in Bethlehem, anyway, and you can see it wouldn't pass code anywhere really in the world. It's kind of all they got. Any little earthquake or shaking, that's over.
These are refugees from 1948, Tom?
Yeah, they trace it back to 1948.
So their families have been basically were like 3 or 4 generations of refugees.
Right. Yep. Yeah, and it's all over the West Bank. I think the largest one is outside the modern city of Nablus, which is the city with the woman at the well. Jesus meets the woman at the well. But yeah, and then this is right outside this building. I just kind of surreptitiously, I always hate taking pictures of people, and yet I want to remember. This is one of my favorite pictures that I took. This is a wall and it's some graffiti, and it's just a Bethlehem family, this daughter who's looking at us, looks like little koala bear, this little toy trying to lead a normal kid's life. And just look at the resolve and strength in that woman's face, kind of leading her family and just trying to lead a dignified life. And, the key again is on the back of this sign. I'm not sure what all yeah, it's a little, I had about 10 pictures, by the way. This is some graffiti on the wall. So one of the things that's frustrating, I don't know that it happens a lot. I didn't hear about it happening a lot when I was there, but it certainly has happened, is that they get so much water and then Israel can just cut it off.
Oh.
And so if you're in a place where there's a mix of Palestinian, or you're just traveling around the West Bank somewhere and you're not sure if it's an Israeli settlement or if it's a Palestinian village, the way that you can tell is you look on the roofs. And if there are these big tanks on the roof, it's a Palestinian home because they have to store their water. And when the spigots are going, they get as much as they can to store before it gets shut off. And in the Israeli homes, there's no need for that. So they just always have running water like you and I take for granted. So that's kind of a sad little image, right? This is just a typical
drop of water was a cross.
Oh, yeah. True enough, yeah. Yeah.
And the barbed wire at his feet.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of barbed wire in this. He's a British artist named Banksy, and they actually have a museum for Banksy there. He does a lot of, I don't know if that's one, but that's a typical kind of thing he would do. I have some other photos of that. This is just a group. I didn't know. I just go up to Bethlehem a lot and eat. And this is the entrance right over here. You can't quite see the Church of the Nativity. So that's the oldest church of continuing occupancy in Christendom. The Church of the Nativity in Bethlehem since the 500s. So there's older structures, but this has always been occupied and people have always celebrated Mass there. And that's just like a group standing in Manger Square for a little photo in front of the Church of Nativity.
At the Church of the Nativity, they always celebrate the Mass of Christmas, right? Every day.
Yeah, certainly pilgrim groups are invited to do that. I don't know if like the local, it's also a parish off to the left of this, which is out of sight, is the Catholic Church, which is attached. This is like a Greek Orthodox church. They give the Catholics the manger area, but the main sanctuary where they have Mass is Greek Orthodox. And so I mean I think the local community, like I went to Mass at the local parish, and it was the Sunday of the 27th week of Ordinary Time. So but this is the only entrance for the public into the Church of Nativity. This little thing there, it's just kind of neat. It's it used to be big like this, but not just now, but for centuries it's been a contested land and there's been fighting. And so to keep military out with their horses and everything, they bricked all that in and just leave this little hole. You can't get a lot of artillery in it. If I did a close up, there's a lot of like bullet holes and stuff on the face of these churches because of the violence over the years. 1967 was a big war between them. And but anyway, we spiritualize it and said, in order to encounter the newborn Christ, we have to humble ourselves and sort of to go into the church. You have to basically bow down to get inside the church, just physically. It's kind of neat.
Huh.
So this is, then when you go into the church, then you go downtown. This is the place where Christ was born. This is where the pilgrims line up. And right now, gosh, it depends if it's high season, and it's almost always high season there now. My last week there was the last week in November, right after Thanksgiving week in the U.S. And then I could go on the Church of Nativity and have pretty easy access, like less than a half-hour wait. But boy, September, October, November, until that last week in November, you'd be waiting 3 hours in a big line to be able to kneel before the birthplace of Christ.
But now, of course, with COVID, there are very few people there, right?
Right. Yeah, I'm reserved for February 2022 if anybody wants to get in.
Good plug. So Tom made some wonderful pilgrimages to the Holy Land. Tom and Father Sloviak at St. Mark's have done several of these tours. I would encourage you to check on that.
We'd like to get Father Lindner to go chaplain one of these trips. Anyway, so this is like Greek Orthodox. It's a little bit territorial. You hear there's Armenians are there, and the Greek Orthodox, and the Catholic. So off to the right here is
It is territorial as the Church of the Holy Sepulchre.
Yeah,
Similar, it is.
yeah. I think the Catholics aren't too involved in the hostilities. I think it's more like Armenians and the Greeks, but maybe that's just the way I'd like to see it. But there's been like there's a certain group that maybe should sweep the floor from here, like that's the Greek Orthodox area to keep clean. And and then the Armenians maybe have this area, and the Catholics are over here. And if like a Greek sees an Armenian in his area with a broom, they'll like hit him on the head or something. That has happened in our modern era. So it's kind of like where the Prince of Peace was born, And there's even been, I don't know, I think in the 90s, I remember seeing a story where someone left an explosive at the birthplace. It's just all these awful ironies,
Yeah.
Where there's peace should be reigning. But
could be the title of the book, Awful Ironies.
Yeah. What's the title?
No, it could, Awful Ironies.
Oh, yeah, good.
That could be the title.
But when the Catholics, like when my groups, if we have a smaller group, usually we're in the church next door where there's midnight mass with the Catholics. But I was with a smaller group, so we had mass over here at the manger. There's an altar at the manger. It's beautiful. So anyway, there's two big sites where pilgrims go. And like, so the Russians, I don't think the US because it's so far away, but more local people like Russians, when they go, they'll have these packages, like a 2-day package, and they'll go to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre and the Church of the Nativity, and then go home. I mean, Those are like the two. And so those are really long waits for pilgrims. That's where the lines get long. And these are some of my Lars friends, I volunteered with, and we made those nativities together. So I was like just after working one day before I left, say, would you mind if I took a photo? And he was like, yeah, they wanted the photo bad. So just nice. There's the product. You were selling some of those, right?
Yep. Some of our families have those in their homes right now.
Yeah. If they're leaning over, you just try to straighten them out, make them right again. Joseph and Mary there.
Now you claimed, so it's Father Krieg that began to theorize that these are made from the wool of Bethlehem sheep.
Yes.
Who would be descendants of the sheep who breathed upon the baby Jesus in the manger. Can you give us some historical validity for that claim?
I think it just stands to reason, right?
Okay. Common sense. Okay.
Yeah.
Some things are just better not picked apart, right?
I don't know if they do 23andMe for sheep. I don't know. We could try.
Just let it go and don't pick it apart.
Okay. This is in Bethlehem, and this was, I stayed this is my last day there, and they were processing years and years ago. Someone took a piece of the manger and took it to Rome. So Rome had it. And I think the Prime Minister of Palestine, somebody asked Pope Francis, can we have that back? We want it. It belongs in Bethlehem. And Pope Francis said, okay. And so there was this big parade and ceremony where they processed with the piece of the manger. And I took part of that. So this is just like a pilgrim's route. It's very near where I had that icon class. And there were like marching bands, and like we have Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts kind of thing. They have like the Catholic Scouts, and they would have in parade. I don't think I have a picture. This is just a group of my friends. This is my last night there. The tree lighting. This tree here is the Manger Square tree. Just look how packed it is, and there's lots of people there. And now I think it was I think there were like 10 people this year that were allowed to be part of it. It was a big deal.
But that tree will see Manger Square, especially like on Christmas Eve. They'll have coverage from midnight mass there and things. So we'll see Manger Square on TV.
Yeah. So that's good. That's another picture. So I think I got a little out of sequence on just that wall again on kind of a rainy afternoon. This is like I was going to end with this, but I have a few more, just not too many more. This was they were waiting for this parade to come. And they're all, they were sitting out there, and I was sitting there with them. And then this little girl hears like a drum beat, and look at her slippers. Aren't they cool?
I know. These slippers.
And anyway, she sees this band coming, so she tells her, "There they come! Here they come!" I just think that's one of the best pictures I ever took, and kind of maybe a hopeful image.
Mm-hmm.
Child. This is a piece of art I bought before I left. This woman and girl with the balloons, that's a Banksy piece of art. And this one's just a local person. This is would be a watchtower on the wall, which exists too, where it can be staffed by soldiers. And it's just, it's again, that irony. It's Mary and Joseph looking to try to get into Bethlehem, but they can't, because there's a wall. So there's that group with the rosary outside the wall again. This was some nice art on the wall. So that's just a regular wall. And then someone drew these angels trying to tear the wall apart. Isn't that neat?
Mm-hmm. And one of them's even wearing a mask.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. I don't know why. I never thought that. Yeah. And here's another one of those irony things. So Madonna and Child, but you see the barbed wire for halos, and you see the what do you call it? A target, on Mary's heart.
Where Mary's heart would be.
Yeah.
Immaculate Heart.
Yeah. So pretty evocative, right?
And that's something folks could just pause and just reflect on that.
Yeah. There's Majdi. That's my guy who'd always make me the coffee when I walked by. Good guy. I have his WhatsApp number, so I still call him once in a while.
I bet that was stout coffee too.
Oh, it was very good. Yeah.
It was not decaf.
No. Yeah, I don't know if you ever had that Turkish or Arabic type, but they just put the finely ground grounds in it, and they boil it like 3-4 times until it all settles. Then they pour it right out of the can. Yeah, I mean that's what made it so enjoyable was getting to know somebody and getting to know people.
Sure.
Feeling connected. And there's something I think about connecting with the people that are, you said, well, how did they treat you or whatever. And I don't want to overplay like they're all in misery all the time. Like Maji is a joyful guy. It's kind of like I think when you suffer together, you suffer, but you suffer together and you find fellowship and purpose and some joy in life.
Well, and I think you've experienced this too, Tom, when you travel to places like Bethlehem or to Haiti, where I have been. I mean, people live in excruciating circumstances, but there is a joy about them, which we struggle to understand sometimes.
Yeah. And this is in Lars. This is where we'd make our things. We're making the little caves for the nativity sets right here. And that's Youssef. He's one of the non-disabled people. That's Sarah and Hadid, 2 of my great pals. I didn't work as often with these two, so I'm not remembering their names, but these two were fun to work with. My best compliment that I got there, because I didn't know Arabic. I tried to learn a couple words. I'd say salam when I walked in, like peace, and they kind of make fun of me because I was just looking stupid and not saying stuff. But it was all good humored. And then once this Hadid said to Youssef, said something in Arabic, and he kind of smiled. And I said, "What did she say?" He said, "She said that you look like you're happy to be with us."
There you go.
That was pretty nice. And that might be the last one. So this is Israel side now.
Sure. With the sun going down, or sun coming up?
Down. You kidding me?
I don't. Oh, yeah, you wouldn't be the sunrise.
Yeah.
So those are wonderful images, Tom.
Yeah.
As we're coming, your second Christmas since you were there, how does it affect your celebration of Christmas?
Well, I just always remember that. I think a lot of the narratives, the stories that I think that I might preach on or something, it just adds a little zing if it's something that happened in Bethlehem. But like that story I just told you about, looks like he's happy to be with us. Isn't that a Christmas message about God?
Well, I think too, just as you mentioned, that the similarities to what Mary and Joseph may have experienced, in terms of the Roman control of that region, and the fact that they had to go to Bethlehem to be counted was because of Roman control, oppression. I just, we have such a fairy tale image sometimes of these places, and it just, not to shatter that, but I think it's also important that we have honest understandings too. So, thank you, Tom, very much for sharing all of that with us.
Yeah, happy to.
Hey, I forgot to mention, most importantly, Father Thomas, pastor of St. James Parish in Eau Claire.
Yeah.
And I suppose you're celebrating Christmas too this year.
Yeah, your introductory comments are exactly what we're going through too.
Yeah.
We have some full masses, and we're just, nobody wants to close the door on anybody coming to church. So there's a church, a Lutheran church in town here that's really on the ball, and like you guys are, and they're requiring receipts. So when
really, like a ticket?
Yeah, when you sign in, you get a generated thing. You can't get in unless you. Yeah. And I say with charity and everything, but it's yeah. We've had a real cooperative community in terms of masking. So we wear the masks and the distance, and so I'm grateful.
And I forgot to mention at the beginning, and if anyone is still with us now at the end, Mass will be live streamed at 6 p.m. on Christmas Eve, and as I mentioned, at 9:30 on November or on Sunday. But 6 p.m. Christmas Mass will be live streamed and available anytime after that. So I know you're live streaming Mass as well, but we don't want people to watch the St. James Mass. We want them to watch the St. Anne's Mass. So thank you, Tom, very much. I hope you and your community have a great celebration of Christmas. Let's conclude with prayer. Eternal God of all times and places, we consider today in this time those who are wounded and isolated and burdened, who face adversity and resistance, oppression, those who grieve, who feel uncertain. Help us in these days to realize the promise of Emmanuel, that God is among us and that we can make the love of God more real, especially for those who seek to know of that love and mercy. We ask this through Christ our Lord.
Amen.
Amen. Maranatha, God with